The new world PTR has now been out for over a day, and the in-game market has already reflected all the changes that you could possibly imagine. But I'm going to tell you how you can probably make gold. Now the key thing here isn't to buy these mats and hope they go up. The key thing is probably to farm them. And your goal is effectively to milk the M10 runners who have lots of shards, milk the speedrunners, and you know what? Milk the warloggers as well. They're going to be desperate to get ahead. They're going to be desperate to get the best gear, and you want to sort of sell it to them the first couple of days and then maybe start collecting in your own time. If you are a speedrunner or a warlogger, then you might want to farm these if you can be bothered, or be prepared to pay. Let's jump in and talk about what we're getting. Now we can't make this video without talking about the Asmodeums and the scarabs and that kind of thing. So let's explain what you're going to need, how many, and is it worth buying now or worth farming? Spoiler alert, it's not worth buying now. So on the PTR, there's going to be a couple of things of note. Now I'm just going to talk about Orichalcum and Mithril and Prismatic, but just know that obviously everything has its own version. So there's a version of this for leather and for cloth and for wood as well. It applies to all of them. So when I talk about Asmodeum, that applies to Runic Leather, that applies to Phoenix Weave and Ebony and stuff like that, okay? Because the key thing in the game, I think, is effectively going to be these prismatic ingots, or, you know, whatever they are. Now, apart from the color vomit, you might look at this and you might think, oh, it requires Asmodeum. That's the big boy. That's going to be the key thing. And yes and no. I think in the short term, what's actually going to be the most important bit will be the Mithril ingots. It's worth noting that people are already now crafting Asmodeum, and you can craft 10 per day. Well, do you know how many you can craft of this prismatic ingot? Well, you can craft 10 per day. So you can craft at the same ratio as Asmodeum as the ingots. Now, what that means is that the cooldown will have a little bit of value, but it won't have a lot of value. It's a sub cooldown of a cooldown, and one that you can do at the same rate that you are doing the prismatics. Now, that doesn't mean the mats won't have any value. Of course, they absolutely will. But what it does mean is that I don't think Asmodeum's going to go to the moon. It might do in the short term. So basically on live, it might be worth actually doing your cooldowns now and then selling the mats, but making sure you've got enough Orichalcum to craft more, so you're doing it like daily. The key bottleneck, I think, is actually weirdly going to be the Mithril ingots, simply because there's only so much limited Mithril on the map. Yes, it's spread out all across and there's little ores here and there, but where there's a lot of it, it's going to be heavy, heavy, heavy camp. Multiple people all spamming E trying to get the nodes, I think, even at stupid hours in the morning or at night. Eventually, that will probably change. Eventually, Asmodeum and Mithril ingots might sort of like balance out a little bit, but I think there's going to be more Asmodeum than Mithril for the first coming days. But as I said, they're all going to have value. And if you are one of the people who are not an M10 speedrunner, or what will be an M3 speedrunner, and you're not a warlogger, then getting on and making your Asmodeum and then selling it and having your Orichalcum and stuff like that will make sense, because Mithril, it requires Orichalcum. Now, whilst this isn't tier 6, it effectively is, because it requires 1 Orichalcum for 12 Mithril ore. But it's worth noting that the old stuff would require 8 Orichalcum ore for 2 star metal ingots. This is only 1 Orichalcum and 12 Mithril. What that means is that you won't need quite as much Orichalcum. Of course, it's still going to have value, and actually on my server Barry, it's gone from 10 gold to 18 gold. So if you've been stockpiling it, there'll be a point where you'll actually get your best bang for your buck. It might be now and it might be at launch. It's hard to predict. I mean, if you're selling, that is. Obviously, you can go out and farm it, but there's multiple people farming it, you know, again, because people know that it's got value, so they're back at it. Also worth noting that bots are going to struggle in the expansion simply because they've got to pay for the expansion, and then they've got to level up a little bit. It's all going to be a little bit awkward for them. Eventually, they'll probably like sort out the game, but at the start, yeah, it's going to be who gets there first. So yeah, you can't farm Mithril, but you should have some Orichalcum and you should have some Asmodeum. You've got that, then you're set. Now, that applies to if you want to sell it, or if you are one of the people who want to buy it and, you know, try and get ahead. And the next thing is sort of on a similar vein. Now, there's a few things with this stone cutting. We need to talk about scarabs. Now, a lot of people saw this recipe and they panic bought some scarabs. In fact, I think I bought a few for probably overpriced, so I'm included in that. People saw, oh, it requires 10 scarabs? That's going to be the bottleneck. I need to make sure I craft this. And that's not really the case. Before we talk a little bit more on scarabs, I just want to point out that there is going to be a bit of demand in the stone cutting area because people are going to want to get these prismatic scarabs. So runestone is probably going to go up, or like it might do at a certain point and there'll be a peak time to sell it. Obviously, you need lodestone and loamy lodestone and that kind of stuff for that. For the runic voidstone, you need some extra lodestone and you need some powerful gemstone dust as well. And what's interesting is this is going to be a key way of getting up your stone cutting, but there's no new gems or anything like that. So actually sort of fusing your gems will be a good way of making gold. So quintessences are probably going to go up, molts will go up like accordingly, and just blue gems might actually be in high demand. Now back to scarabs overall. The reason I think it's not the bottleneck is because whilst you need 10, you can only use one, as far as I know, you can only use one effectively once every week. So you need an Azoth inductor for that use. And whilst you can't see it because it's slightly behind my head, what you will note is that it's 25,000 gold, but you can only buy one once every week. It doesn't actually say that here, but on New World Database it does. Not only can you craft one per week, and it's worth noting that the Azoth inductor is bought, but the scarab isn't, the amount of materials required will also be the bottleneck. So I don't have the mats on me, but for a chest piece, that's going to be, it will be perfect gear score 700. I've just not got the trophies, the food and everything up right now, but it would be perfect gear score 700. To do that though, you would actually need 440 of the cooldown mat. Well, the primary one, and then obviously you need 240 of the secondary and the tertiary one as well. On your own, that's 44 days worth of cooldown mat for one bis. In 44 days, you can quite easily farm 10 golden scarabs. I don't think scarabs are the bottleneck. They're going to go up a bit because you know what? If you're a speedrunner or a warlogger, you're not going to be bothered about that. You've got the gold from the Umbral Shards or the warlogging. And you know what? You're just going to buy these. Get them crafted. Do you one a week. Get your bis. Companies will be absolutely spending insane amounts of gold. And you, unless you're one of those people, want to be the one receiving that gold. You can get your bis, you know, either down the line or near bis quite quickly. And that goes back to the Asmodeum, etc. That's going to have value because people are going to need those cooldowns. But because it's like a 1-to-1 ratio, it's not going to be like exponentially up in price. It's just the materials right now are going to be in demand. Pretty much from now until probably like 2 weeks after the expansion, the prices I think are going to be very high. They'll be very high right now whilst people are adjusting. It'll dip before the expansion, and then once the expansion comes out, prices will be absolutely all over the place. You are possibly not prepared. Now let's change pace a little bit and talk about cooking. Now there's not a lot when it comes to cooking. It basically boils down to two types of food. You have some stat food, which by the way doesn't appear to be including like or needing a recipe. Recipes seem to be put on the back burner in the main. But you also have some luck food when you're harvesting, gathering, that kind of thing. Now all of the stat food basically use bananas. Hey, you know what? You can't get bananas right now because they're not in the game, but that'll be something that probably has value when that comes out. However, the rest of the stuff is pretty, you know, self-explanatory. People are probably going to want sugar, milk, blueberry, honey, lemon, etc. Right? Pick whichever one you think is going to go up the most. Just make sure you've got some so that you're not going out like paying ridiculous prices. It might not be worth buying them now, might be worth farming them or buying them in a couple of weeks or something. But just be aware of this. There's also some luck food, and you need some of the fancier meats for these, which could go up in value. I don't necessarily know if it really will. Like, I mean, I don't know. They'll probably go up quite quickly. People want as much luck as possible. I'm not 100% sure if this is more luck than what we used to have. I think it is, but even if it isn't, it's 50 minutes, so it'll be worth. Now, the other thing with cooking is actually mount related. So you can also cook some food that will give you XP for riding. Now, this will be very, very short term. It doesn't take long to get riding 250. If you do the quests, etc., you're looking at maybe like 10 hours, and it's not going to take you very long, and you get food along the way from the quest, etc. But you can craft some that will speed up the process. In theory, this is another thing where you could effectively be level 250 in an hour. If you have a lot of barley, water, milk and honey, then you can craft the basic ones. Then you need the basic ones to craft the mount ones, which are just, there's no name to them, but you need more barley, water and milk. Then you need to make this complex mount vitamins, which you actually don't feed directly. You need to make it using mint, and then you craft the hearty ones. Same thing for the potent into the luxury, right? Just a lot of cooking materials are probably going to have value very early on, but then I think once everybody's max level, there's literally no reason to do this. By the way, that food, that looks absolutely delicious. I don't think I'd be feeding that to my horse. Now, technically, you can't use them because some of them have a level requirement, so you would have to start early and go, you know, level up as you go, but, you know, it's worth noting. Now, speaking of consumables, there is a bit of uproar about one of the new potions. Now, I don't actually have any because I use them in Outpost Rush. There is a new potion called the Regeneration Serum. Now, it doesn't actually show you the stats here, but it's stronger than a normal health potion. By default, you get more health back. It does use the same cooldown as a regen potion because it also gives you like regen over time. It also gives you stamina over time and mana over time. It's 3 of the health potions, mana potions, and the regen potions, and 5 Alcest. Now, Alcest and Azoth Water, that is going to be up, and up. It already is. You could get out there and farm it if you want. A lot of people sort of were farming this early because they sort of expected there'll be something with the potions, and so there is. However, health potions are quite cheap. Mana potions were cheap, but have already gone up, at least on my server, and regen potions were already expensive. They're sort of the main bottleneck about this. Either way, if this doesn't get changed, this is going to be one of the most important items. I mean, even if it gets nerfed, it's still going to be important. While we are here, we need to talk about the replacement for ward. True to their word, the ward potions are literally getting extended. Now, I sort of thought it would be the new ward potions. That's not true. There aren't any new ward potions. It's literally just the old ones. Now, you don't need to be using quints, by the way. You can use just normal molts or what have you, but I think it will affect how many you get. But what you do need is one of these tier 5 elementals. So it's, in this case, it's the Earth Shell Tail. But you can use the Spinefish Fins. For the Beast one, it's the same too. Actually, for all of them, it's these two. It's going to be Earth Shell Tails and Spinefish Fins. For some reason, I thought there was different types. There's not. But their prices are going to be going up. Again, go out and farm them. They're not going to be something that you would necessarily want to just solo farm, because if you just farm them, you'd be quite bored. But if you're out farming molts or something, make sure you include these, because these are already going up. Now, I don't think you'll necessarily need a shed ton of potions, like they do last 40 minutes. However, for the speedrunners, do you know how many expeditions you can do in a week? 100. They might literally go through 100 of these things in a week. The price might be going higher and higher. Now, I forgot this when I was at the Stonecutter, but basically charged sand might also be going up. One thing that also might go up in the long term will be the globs, because you might want to be making good gems for your gear. Just in fact, gems in general will probably be used, so like cut gems. People will be leveling up, people will be getting a lot of new gear and just whacking in any gem they've got. So just gems in general might go up in price, and I sort of suspect they already are. But specifically, I want to talk about charged sand. Now, charged sand is going to be used for something called a jelly jug. Now, I'm not 100% sure where you craft this, so do forgive me, but I'm pretty sure that you need the charged sand and you need the prismatic blocks. So these prismatic blocks are going to get used quite a bit. Apparently, it uses smelting, but I can't find them. That's not to say it doesn't exist, it's just I can't find it. The jelly jugs, basically, though, in the new zone, they're going to give you more loot and they're going to give you more damage. You're going to do more damage with them. The mats are quite significant though, but it does require charged sand. So just looking now, it actually requires infused sand, but the way that you craft the infused sand is to have 25 charged sands plus 10 purified hearts. It's a little bit annoying to show you some of this because I don't know where you craft them, and sometimes you can't craft them unless you have the materials, which is a little bit annoying because I don't have the materials to show you. The hearts though, I think you get as part of the quest. Well, basically it's Medusa's area where the stone, whatever, I'm not going into details about that by now. All you need to know is that sand might be on the rise, and that might be something you can farm now. You know, you go into Brimstone, hit some sandstone block. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is a little bit vague, because I'm probably gonna have to do a follow-up video on this on its own, and I've not really done the maths yet. There's going to be people who are going to go from level 200 in professions to 250 quite quickly. Now, I haven't calculated how you do that. I sort of suspect, obviously it's better if you can do your first craft of the day, but because the new materials like mithril, etc. are going to be in short supply, a lot of people are going to think about doing it just using tier 5s. So your tier 5 stuff, including the purple versions of them, are going to be in demand. So for example, you can use Tolvium to craft the level 150 stuff. So Tolvium and stuff like that will probably hold value. So will Orichalcum, of course, but I think Tolvium, Cinnabar, and the other purple requirements, they've already gone up in price, and I can sort of see them going up again. People are going to want large quantities to craft and try and get ahead, basically try and get from 200 to 250 instantly, because whilst you obviously would technically be better crafting the 205 stuff, because inevitably they're going to give you more XP. Here we're looking at weaponsmithing. the reality is getting the actual tier 5 mithril, you wouldn't use prismatic unless you're a lunatic, is going to be a bit tricky, because early on that's not going to be possible, and some people are just going to be like, oh, I'll just get it out of the way using tier 5s, and that's why a lot of the prices have already gone up. I'll talk more about this in the video, but it's worth noting that a lot of the tier 5 materials are going up for this reason. People are going to just try and shortcut the leveling process rather than go out, farm the mithril, come back, craft one of everything, etc. They're just going to get all the materials, blast a 250, and it's not quite as efficient to do that. Like, in terms of the mats, it's not efficient, but in terms of value, probably is. Now, one last tip that I'm not really actually going to go into full details here because I don't really know how to explain it, but there is a material that is basically, it's almost replacing Umble Shards. It doesn't quite fully replace Umble Shards, as in you can't upgrade your gear directly. There is a way of upgrading some named items, by the way, that is over 650 to go to legendary. And I'm not going to explain it right here, but basically you're going to want some of this stuff. It's called dark matter, and it's slightly behind my head. You get this in a variety of different ways. You get it from killing raffle bones. I think you get it from chests. You get it from quests. But one way you do get it is from salvaging legendary items, and it appears from salvaging anything legendary over 6,000. Not 6,000, 600. Now that raises a bit of a question what you do on live. Is it worth with your named items using your Umble Shards to get it up to like 600 and then waiting and then salvaging it in the expansion? Maybe. It depends how desperate you are for that. I think you will get enough in the game because basically you're going to get, I don't know how many it is from Outpost Rush, you get maybe like 20 or 30 from Outpost Rush. Like, if you play the game, I think you're going to get enough for your normal activities, and I don't think there's going to be a massive rush to get it. However, there might be. Personally, I think I'm going to just absolutely clean house with my storage. I can't be bothered using my Umbles to upgrade them and then just holding on to them and then salvaging them. I think I'm just going to get rid now. Also worth noting that Umble Shards, they are literally getting changed to gold, okay? So this character actually does have some Umble Shards. And if you see my gold there, each stack is worth 1,000 gold. So 10,000 Umble Shards is worth 1,000 gold. And if I salvage this, you see I'm going to go from 191 to 192, and there you go. It's a ratio of 0.1. Now, some people have literally like 5 million, and they're the people we're milking. Those speedrunners, they're going to want this, and they're going to want it quickly. As I said, I would not be buying this stuff right now because the prices are already high. People have already cottoned on, right? They're already aware of this. But if you farm, and you're not like one of these people who really want to get ahead, you actually just maybe want to take your time, you will make money day 1 or 2 or 3 or something like that. There will be money to be made. There will be people spending insane amounts of gold. You want to be one of the beneficiaries of that. I think inevitably you'll get close to this quite quickly, either using the seal, getting gear from Outpost Rush, doing the harder dungeons or what have you. Gear seems really easy to get on the PTR, like a normal dungeon was giving me like 690 gear. I don't think that's probably going to be intended, but maybe it is. It either is very easy to get or it's not going to be that easy to get. But in general, I don't think it'd be like insane to get over 675 legendaries. That's sort of near this. That'll be quite quick. But getting the gear score to do the dungeons, I think that might take you just a little bit longer. But personally, I think you'll get it through playing the game. And if you really want to rush, then you've got to pay up one way or another. I'm sorry if this video was a little bit long. There's so much changes that to sort of like point you in the right direction is a little bit tricky. Some of the stuff that I said might quite frankly be wrong. It might get changed, I might be mistaken, but from my best will, I think that's what's going to be happening. I think these are going to be the pressure points effectively. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I have now changed this to Patreons. Big thank you to you guys. There are some YouTube members who are now unfortunately left off. If you are a YouTube member watching this, I'm trying to move you over to Patreon. I thank you either way. But it's been a pleasure having you. Thank you very much. What you should all definitely do right now is have a beautiful day, like and subscribe. Goodbye.